hit that like an idiot.
Oh, I don't think so.
Hey, welcome to the channel. And as I promised in my last review video, I'm putting out this updated review of my Trek Remedy. So I put in a fair bit more time riding it on a variety of trails. I'd like to share what I've learned while riding this rig. Just to recap, when I was looking for a new bike, I wanted something with 27.5-inch wheels to help make the twisty, turny trails of the Midwest a little more manageable and a little more fun. I also wanted the bike to have a fair amount of travel to give me confidence when I do get to ride gnarly trails. But I didn't want it to have an insanely long reach or insanely slack head tube angle like a lot of the modern bikes today have. You know, that's the BMX rider in me. I wanted it to be aggressive, but also be super lively and poppy, like a BMX bike. These ones are what led me to the Trek Remedy. With 150 millimeters of rear travel and 160 millimeters of front travel, a modest 455 millimeter reach, and a 65.5 degree head tube angle in the low setting on my large size frame, the Trek Remedy checked all my boxes on paper. You know, compared to other companies' bikes in this category, the Trek Remedy has a much shorter reach and steeper head tube angle. Basically, these geometry numbers paint the story of a bike that is meant to be rallied hard, spend as much time in the air as on the ground, and get real stylish as the bike is incredibly easy to maneuver. So now that you know why I ended up with this bike, let's talk about what it's kitted with. I don't want to get into the weeds with this because you have internet and can look this up. The Remedy 9.8 comes as a carbon frame using Trek's OCLV carbon. The frame has a completely straight down tube, which Trek cleverly named Straight Shot. The idea behind this straight shot down tube is it creates more stiffness in the front end, which improves handling characteristics and predictability throughout the trails. And this bike also comes stock with a Fox Performance 36 fork, Fox Evol shock with the Trek reactive damping, which is supposed to improve the top end stroke support and pedaling characteristics for climbs and such, but we'll get into that a little later. It also comes with SRAM GX Eagle drivetrain, SRAM G2 RSC 4-piston brakes, Bontrager carbon bars, Bontrager Pro stem, Bontrager dropper post, and on a large frame it comes at 170 millimeters stock, which is sweet and plenty of drop. And finally, it has Bontrager carbon rims laced to Bontrager hubs using the 108 tooth rapid drive. It's a super fast engagement that helps, navigating technical sections and getting through them. And then just a little side note here, these wheels, they're the first Bontrager wheels that I've had any experience with that weren't built for the Weenie Hut Junior Express and aren't made from macaroni noodles. All other Bontrager wheels I've ever used or friends of mine have ridden have folded ridiculously fast. So these ones have been holding up great and staying true, so it's good to know that they must be improving something over there in the old Bontrager factory, wherever that may be in Wisconsin or whatever. The bike is also equipped with Trek's knock block headset that limits steering to about 60 to 70 degrees of turning, which accommodates for the straight shot down tube we talked about earlier. But more about that a little bit later. And all these components, they're great and all, but whether you get the Remedy 7, the Remedy 8, the 9.8, or the 9.9, you will get a bike with a component package that delivers and will get you on the trails and just absolutely shredding. I didn't mention the Remedy 9.7 because I don't really think it's worth the money over the 8, considering that the drivetrain is actually not as nice as what comes on the 8, and it's quite a bit heavier. You do get a carbon frame, but for me personally, that's not worth the price gap, and I can justify it. There are other people though that really want that carbon frame, and the 9.7 does get them more into a better price range to get the carbon. So fair enough on that. For me though, I would never get it. I also think it's worth mentioning that I replaced the front brake on my Remedy here. So I replaced it with a Hayes Dominion. And it's not because the SRAM G2 sucked, it's because, well, I sucked. And I hit a tree and I busted the lever mounts, which you can see here. So the brake still works fine, works fantastically. I just can't match it or mount it on anything anymore. But between me and you, it's a little side note. The Hayes Dominion, it's a much better brake, and I'll be replacing the rear G2 with the Dominion in the future. Hey, so if you guys enjoy these videos and mountain biking content in general, then consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps the channel grow, and it helps keep me on the trails when I inevitably do something stupid, like, I don't know, hit a tree and break apart. So, anyways, now you know all about the bike. Let's talk about it on the trail. From riding it over the last 6 months, I have noticed that the bike is at home on trails that have steep sections, tight corners, rock gardens, rock slabs, drops, jumps, berms, and punchy climbs. Sounds kind of like it's at home on everything, you know. And it descends like a beast. It handles rocky terrain like a champ. I never feel like there isn't enough bike when I'm riding super chunky and chundery stuff. I feel incredibly confident on the bike when going down super steep sections and rock slabs. The straight shot down tube and boost rear spacing really help to keep the bike stable and holding a line. It's really predictable and easy to navigate when transitioning on and off rocks or through rocky tech spots. I've not found the limit of the bike on drops yet. I've hit some pretty rad drops, including several cool drops in Duluth, and not one of them felt uncomfortable on the bike. I'm sure there's a limit of this bike when it's airborne, but my skill will keep me from finding it. So for me, jumps, drops, super solid on this rig. A+ work. And so now we've talked about the really fun stuff and the really fun parts of mountain biking, but we need to talk about how the bike handles the lung busting, leg burning part of mountain biking, which is climbing. All right, this bike climbs like a freaking goat when it comes to techie climbs or punchy climbs, or even areas where you have to navigate some tight turns when pedaling over rocks and such. It handles all that really well. I love this bike for these kind of climbs, and I love to test my mettle whenever I can on it. Some of that really good punchy climbing may be due to the reactive damping in the rear shock, but a few of my friends with Trek bikes that have replaced that shock say they haven't really noticed much of a difference when it comes to climbing. Maybe a little bit more bob, but it's nothing that isn't manageable. We'll talk about my thoughts on the reactive shock in a bit. So now that you've heard everything I had to say, descends great, rocks great, steep sections great, jumps, drops, punchy climbs, all that's great. Really sounds like it's pretty killer for all the trails, right? And yeah, it is. But let's be honest. It is a bit of a hog when it comes to longer climbs, and really isn't as much fun for trails that require unending pedaling. So like flat XC trails. This is in part due to the amount of travel on the bike, and also the 27.5 by 2.6 inch wide tires it comes stock with. Those wide tires, they produce more rolling resistance. I mean, they're near plus bike width. And that can suck away a lot of your energy when on a flat trail. The tires do, however, with that width and compounds and everything, offer some awesome traction and confidence in chunky terrain and throughout some corners. And while I said it loves rock gardens, it's important to note that it's a 27.5 inch bike. You have to pick your line a bit more carefully than say your buddy who's riding his 29er, who, because of his big old wagon wheels, has more of that ability to just act like a dumb animal and just go straight through whatever. This bike, of course, being 27.5 also makes up for that with the snappiness and the fun factor through the air and in tight sections. Basically, if you're looking for a fun, poppy, rowdy bike through a lot of different terrain and don't mind not getting KOMs on the climbs, this one's a contender. This bike is definitely a contender. Okay, so obviously I love this bike, but it has some things I don't particularly care for on it. To start, the reactive damping on the shock is a bit meh. It supports well during pedaling, but also sucks on square edge hits and feels dead and uninspiring when going down through sections like this one. Nice. Another issue with the shock is it tries to be too supportive and doesn't track the terrain at times. And this leads to me being hung up on some climbing and slipping off rocks, my pedals, and just not completing that climb like I should have been able to if the shock would allow the tire just to simply go up and over versus trying to act like a hardtail and bounce up or just stop. It's also somewhat inconsistent with how it runs through its travel. At different times it's blown through all of its travel when really there wasn't any reason for it to. I can't pinpoint a certain feature, a certain trail, a certain kind of anything that caused this. And it's happened several times to me. Just, you know, we'll be going up and over some pedally rock thing and bottom out. And I look, O-rings all the way down. Or I'll do some smallish drop, bottom out, O-rings all the way down. You know, and it doesn't feel great. And I guess I can't pinpoint anything. It's happened to me on climbing rocks and roots, dropping on transitions, going through some flat corners. There is no consistency at times, and that really sucks. I'd love to replace it. I plan on replacing it. However, Trek use proprietary size and mounting eyelets, so you have to get custom hardware to adapt an aftermarket shock. It's a super bummer. Many of your big brand companies, though, they perform shenanigans like this with proprietary sizing, proprietary hardware, proprietary this and that. So it's not really surprising. Next issue is the Bontrager dropper post. It isn't the smoothest. After 6 months of riding, it has developed a lot of play in it. And the collar keeps coming loose, and I have to tighten it back up. I guess using some Loctite might help with this. But this is the first dropper I've ever had that has had this issue with the collar coming loose. Then I also don't particularly care for the ergonomics of the dropper lever. I know I've said that before and still haven't replaced it, but I'll get there. And you know, a lot of parts aren't even in stock right now, but when they do come in stock, I'll probably get like a Wolf Tooth or a P&W loam lever to slap on that bad boy. The last big con of this bike deals with the knock block. Knock block limits steering to about 60-ish degrees either way, so the fork crown doesn't hit the straight shot down tube when you're turning. It's the solution for the problem created by Trek when they formed the straight shot down tube. My problem isn't with knock block itself. It's never limited me on the trails. The only limit with it is I can't do X-ups, which I've complained about before. But in real world trail mountain bike riding, it's never been an issue. My real issue is that it really limits the amount of different stems you can throw on it. So if you wanted to have a longer or shorter stem, you got to get a Bontrager knock block stem to replace it. You can't run any other companies or anything like that. So the compatibility is just seriously limited to this. Now, there is a way to remedy this issue, but that requires modifying the stem, the headset spacers, the frame, and all that. And big shocker, it voids your warranty. So I wouldn't suggest it. To sum it up, this bike is dope. It's sick, super ill. I love it. It didn't feel like it's exactly what I wanted from a bike. Aside from a few quirks and the shock that doesn't like me, it's been fantastic. If you like a bike that can descend, jump, maneuver quickly, and smash the fun button, then this is the bike for you. However, if you're looking for a bike to crush all the long climb PRs and KOMs, or maybe looking for the ultimate enduro race weapon that straight lines the gnarliest rock gardens, then you may want to look another direction. For the rider that just wants a killer all-around bike that can be aggressive for all-out partying on the trails, or modest for just good cruising trail riding, then I highly recommend the Trek Remedy. I hope that this has been helpful and answered questions you may have had. If there's anything I missed, please leave a comment, and I'll try to answer it as quick as possible. Thank you so much for watching this, and enjoy some more riding clips.
got it.
Woo! All right.